Good afternoon, everybody. I hope everybody's doing well today. First off, we're going to call this meeting to order, and I'll do a roll call. Commissioner Gay? Okay, yeah, you're fine. Commissioner Sheffer? Commissioner Sheffer?
Unmuted?
I can hear Commissioner Gay.
Okay.
Commissioner Sheffer? I'll go with Commissioner Byrne?
Here.
Commissioner Sosnowski?
Here.
Commissioner Coluzzi?
Here.
Commissioner Schlosser?
Present.
Commissioner Sheffer?
Here.
Okay, thank you. And the city manager's here, Glenn, and a number of other people from the city staff. Thank you. As you can see from your packet that you've received, we've received a number of different correspondence. We'll go over those briefly in the future, but those will be on the record. What I'd like to do today is first make some comments about what the governor, there was a mayoral meeting with the governor and his staff on the phone today at 10:30. Not much was said, but I'll go over that. Then I'm going to turn it over to the city manager for the implementation of the project itself, and then open it up for discussion amongst the commissioners and speak about the path forward. Right now, we have 5 people registered to speak. However, I believe one will not be on the docket, and one is still not signed up yet, but we'll hear about that later on. First off, basically, as you all know, there was a rally in Rehoboth last night. Went off, the people were here in town for 3+ hours, very peaceful. They marched around the bandstand a number of times, chanted a bit, came down to City Hall for a while, and then went back to the bandstand. The reason I mention that is because that was mentioned on the call with the governor today. Apparently they had a rally over in Seaford last night as well, and that was very peaceful. The fear with the rally here in Rehoboth had been that there may be some kind of violence, not necessarily in Rehoboth proper, but possibly out at the outlet malls. So the outlet malls were very tightly secured by state police. All the entrances were blocked off, and there was nothing that really went on there. And the governor, spoke about a little bit about what had gone on in Dover the other night. But that was really what the governor had spoken about. He asked specifically about Rehoboth, how the weekend went, how things were going as of June 1st. I told him that the weekend we had nice weather, good crowd, seemed to be very reasonable. Most people were following the protocol that he has passed down, people on the boardwalk wearing masks and so on and so forth. So he was very happy with that, and he did not speak any further on anything about the next phase. I think he wants to see how the rentals go as far as reservations, the hotels, as well as the 14-day quarantine that was lifted, to see how many people. I would anticipate that he's expecting more people to be within the state as we go into this next weekend. So that was pretty much it from the governor. I think the call only lasted for about 15 or 20 minutes. Usually they're about 40 minutes. And so there was nothing really from the governor from that perspective. I believe there was a scheduled rally to take place this evening right outside of town, on Friday right outside of town, but I believe they're trying to get that called off. Apparently Georgetown should have a rally maybe as early as Wednesday night, and again, they're thinking that one may be called off as well. So those are the things the governor spoke about. Now, as we move forward, I'm going to turn it over to the city manager in a moment. I just want to mention, the good news and bad news. Last week, the mayor and the commissioners gave the approval to the city manager and staff to move forward with creating the opportunity for more social distancing by putting up barriers on Rehoboth Avenue, while also the opportunity to provide opportunity for businesses to utilize outdoor space for business, whether it's the retail businesses or the restaurants in downtown commercial district. I think the city acted very quickly. They sent out the approved application late on Tuesday night, and I know the city manager will discuss the applications they've got in and what they did starting on Wednesday. The bad news is, however, as you'll see in your packet, I think we have some fires to put out as we move forward on a number of different businesses, actually not feeling great about what we're doing for businesses overall. So I think that's probably something that we need to discuss as we move into the discussion phase of today's meeting. With that, I'd like to turn it over to the city manager to speak to the implementation of the reopening plan that we put in front of the city.
Thank you, Mayor. Just following through on what Mayor Coons just said, I really need to publicly thank Chief Banks, Lieutenant Riddle. This is an amazing police department. I am so proud of them. Last night was just a spectacle of professionalism and safety. All of the surrounding departments that helped out, state police, locally, Dewey Beach, Lewis, I think Ocean View was here. Anyone else that I might be forgetting? DelDOT was here. Just always a very professional and just wonderful application of law enforcement. So thank you very much, Chief.
You're welcome. Thank you.
And all of your officers. And then getting into what we've been through in the last 7 days, I want to thank my staff, including immediately as we followed through with this last Tuesday evening, communication specialist Chris Johnson for staying late and getting the application out. And then immediately after that, on Wednesday, and I'll outline this for you, Chief Banks, Director of Public Works, Kevin Williams, and his team for coming together and spending hours upon hours on this every day and even into the weekend. Projects coordinator Evan Williams for spending his time here. Dennis Jenny, and still continuing to go through with these applications. Just an amazing team, so I'm very thankful, and I appreciate that, all of you. Thank you very much. So, yes, after last Tuesday's meeting, we were tasked with coming up with the application. We were able to get that online for outdoor seating. We posted it to the website by 10 p.m. on Tuesday evening. Wednesday, May 27th, Kevin immediately contacted Suburban Propane, the contact that Commissioner Shanowski had located for us. We, at that point, had an order of 300 Jersey barriers to rent at a cost of $15 each for a minimum of 60 days. We also, in this process on Wednesday, Kevin and Chief Banks were able to advise of the accessibility ramps needed when the barriers were set, how pedestrians were going to access the actual pedestrian walkway from the street side. So 15 accessible ramps were planned for the areas on the first 2 blocks of Rehoboth Avenue, both sides. And at that point, also on Wednesday, the city received 3 applications from restaurants for outdoor seating. On Thursday, starting at 8 a.m., the Jersey barriers began to be delivered by Suburban Propane. They were stored on Rehoboth Avenue, some on the median, and then some later on the storefront sides. The police department assisted placing temporary signage indicating no parking along the storefront sides of Rehoboth Avenue. And we received, throughout this time, additional applications for outdoor seating on Rehoboth Avenue, Wilmington, and Baltimore Avenues. I was out on Thursday with the Director of Public Works, the projects coordinator, the code enforcement officer, and the police chief. We began visiting sites to assist restaurant owners with the proper placement of their outdoor tables, and throughout this time ensuring accessibility for pedestrians on Wilmington and Baltimore Avenues. It was determined that the 300 or so barriers that were being placed the next day, starting to be placed, we would need additional barriers that Suburban Propane was not able to provide. So Kevin was able to secure 50 additional barriers immediately that the city actually purchased, because it came, it was just evident that it was less expensive to purchase them than to rent them for an additional 60 days. On Friday, May 29th, at 7:30, Suburban Propane began placing the Jersey barriers on the north side of Rehoboth Avenue, and they concluded that operation by 8 p.m. We also continued to assist the restaurants and the businesses to provide them the best outdoor seating displays, again, maintaining accessibility when possible. All 15 accessible ramps were then completed by the contractor. They got off to a slow start, but I think once they got going, they were able to complete them by the end of the day on Friday. On Saturday, again at 7:30, Suburban Propane placed the additional barriers on the south side of Rehoboth Avenue, and that process concluded about 4:30 p.m. Just want to mention that we left the loading docks open for trucks to access, and we also left the handicap parking open for accessibility. I believe at this time we need to remedy that a bit, as the vehicles and bicycles and some pedestrians are entering through the gaps and parking there where they're not supposed to be. So we're looking into that. Our observations throughout this time, once the barriers were in place, the parking at the center median causes people to walk in the street, and families with baby strollers and children, once they get out of their vehicles at the median, are walking down the middle of the street. So that's an unsafe condition. There's little to no use of the pedestrian walkway. We're looking at ways to erect directional signage indicating that that is in fact a pedestrian walkway and where individuals should be walking. We have some bicyclists using the walkway, and I think, you know, once we have more people here in the city and more restaurants using the outdoor space, it might be evident that that is a pedestrian walkway, and we'll be hopefully adding some signage to that. Some of the issues and concerns that we need answers for from the commissioners. One is the use of the boardwalk. We've had requests from restaurants to use the boardwalk. And of course, we did not do anything at this time other than take applications, process applications. The First Street pedestrian safety issues for if outdoor seating is permitted there, they need to be addressed. If I can just hold off on getting some feedback from that, I would like Dennis to update us on the restaurant requests to date.
Good afternoon. So we've received a total of 30 applications for outdoor seating. 23 of which are serving alcohol, 2 of which we denied. One was for a location that there was absolutely no room on the sidewalk at all to place tables and also keep the ADA requirements. The other one that we denied was actually for a motel who does not serve food or alcohol, so it didn't meet the intent. And what they wanted to do was more of a building and licensing issue. So I directed them to submit a permit application with the Building and Licensing Department. So currently, of the 23 that requested to proceed with alcohol, we've had 11 approvals from the ABCC, and their turnaround time is approximately 1 to 2 days right now. So we've only got 3 people working it, but they're getting it done really quick. So my hat's off to them as well. And that is where we stand right now.
Thank you, Dennis. Any update on safety concerns from Chief Banks or from Kevin, other than First Street right now?
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I think you mentioned all of them earlier that we're concerned about. We need to do some additional signage on the avenue and the walkway so people understand it's a walkway. We are fixing some issues. We try to leave some of the loading zones open, and then we saw vehicles parking within the loading zones. And so if we did have pedestrians walking in that area, it would interfere. One business owner had some concerns about her driveway. She feels it's her right to park in the walkway, so we'll have to keep getting that moved, but hopefully that's rectified soon. So those are some issues the city manager mentioned. We've had some people complaining that when they get out of the median or park in the median, they used to be able to walk over to the sidewalk, and now they said where it's blocked off, they have to, walk up to the next cutway. And they're complaining about that, but again, I think some signage will help.
Thank you. And just very briefly wanted to indicate the expenses so far to date for the rented barriers, the purchase barriers, and the accessible ramps, the asphalt ramps. That is currently $42,254. Again, just briefly, lost revenue. We have 89 spaces on Rehoboth Avenue. We approximated every 2-week calculation of $95,256 for those 189 spaces, and then an additional 25 spaces on Baltimore and Wilmington Avenues. Again, a approximate calculation every 2 weeks of $8,400. We delayed the meter turn on from May 22nd to May 30, and that's compared to last year, again, an approximate an amount of $215,000. So I think that is everything. I do want to please go back to the boardwalk issue and that of First Street.
Okay, thank you, City Manager. Before we get to the boardwalk issue and First Street, Commissioner Gay, you had your hand up?
Yeah, first of all, I would be remiss if I didn't add my thanks to you, City Manager Lynn, and your entire staff for all the efforts you have put in the last week, and not only with the short time frame, but the complication of the protests yesterday. And I'm just so impressed with the way all that has been handled and relieved about the protest. So I do want to add my thanks to you and to everyone for that. The feedback that I have gotten, certainly from people walking or from people coming to town and wanting to get back into town, has been very positive. I think as a concept, people really like the idea, not only of the social distancing, it gives them a comfort level, and that's what we wanted from the very beginning, was to make people comfortable enough to want to come back. And also, obviously, the outdoor dining has a number of advantages, not only to make patrons comfortable, but for the business of the restaurants. And, you know, this is a theme that's playing out all over the country. And I can't tell you how many people have sent me articles about, you know, being done in Alexandria and in Boston and in Sarasota and all kinds of places. But I got to tell you, we have to go beyond the feel-good aspects of this and really work through the challenges. And I think that based on the communication that we've gotten, it started flooding in last Thursday is when I first heard about it, and it's been constant for 4 days since then. For the businesses that are adversely impacted by this, we have a problem. And I personally feel that we did not have all of the information necessary last week to make a decision that would benefit everyone, and I regret that. So despite the outward appearance and the good things we're doing, I think we have a number of challenges to work through. So I hope we can talk about that today.
Thank you, Commissioner Gay. Commissioner Schlosser.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I guess, I just, you know, was out all weekend kind of watching the barriers and such be put up, and the excitement of the restaurants and many of the retailers for having this opportunity to put things on the sidewalk, to put up outdoor seating. And I wanted to, and I know the city manager and her team were out there all weekend. And I also wanted to just say I thank them and appreciate. And, you know, I see where this is heading now with this discussion and the mayor starting things off with there's bad news. The fact of the matter is this: Rehoboth Beach Main Street did in a very short time a lot of outreach, talked to a lot of folks, not everybody, there's no doubt about it. But we had a very short period of time to help our businesses and to get the word out about what's being done to ensure that our streets are safe and will allow for social distancing. And we made a conscientious decision to check in on this after 2 weeks and see what the impacts are. And so I think I really challenge us to think hard about the fact that we're going to come out now and question everything that we did and say we didn't have enough data and we didn't have enough research. It's a challenging and unprecedented time. We're trying something innovative to help our retailers, to help our businesses, to help get our restaurants back up and running. And most importantly, as we talked about, to ensure that there's safe walkways that will allow for better social distancing for people who visit, for people who work here. So there were many reasons for this decision. There were a lot of folks that were talked to. I know one other commissioner and I walked up and down the streets, stopped and talked to people, and we're going to hear from, I'm sure, all the commissioners that want to say this isn't a good idea, or we need to re-question or rethink what we're doing here. But I talked to many retailers who refused to sign up and say they didn't agree with this decision. So and didn't sign any of these petitions. So I think we can second guess everything that's been done by Rehoboth Beach Main Street and others. But the fact of the matter is we have to do something. I didn't hear any other ideas on what we could do. And we do have to acknowledge that, yes, we could have reached out to more folks, but I just asked the commissioners to be flexible, know that we did talk to a lot of folks during this process. And we have to try different innovative things. And since I'm a Star Trek fan, I will end this by saying, you know, that we do have to think of the good of the many and not just the few. I'm not saying the few have to be discounted, but we have to think about safety first, health as well, and making sure that every one of our businesses has a fighting chance to survive during this unprecedented time. So thank you.
Commissioner Kaluzzi, please.
Thank you. Yeah, before I go on, I really cannot believe the job that staff has done in getting things up and running so quickly. Thank you so much to all of you. It's been an amazing job. I was out there every day just watching and talking to owners of businesses and the staff as well. And the effort was amazing. So going back several meetings, I will say right away that I brought this whole idea up for Baltimore Avenue and Wilmington Avenue, and the reason was forget about the restaurants for now because that wasn't even an issue then. It was for social distancing, and I still believe that. I still believe that it's an important factor for the avenue. I think the biggest issue I found in talking to restaurant owners is, or not restaurant owners, but retail and restaurant, all the businesses. And I didn't talk to all of them, but there were businesses who said, I didn't know. Nobody talked to me. So that's the biggest concern I had is, I know Main Street talked to the Main Street people, but we should have cast the net that we talk to everyone. I felt that they were left out. That's what they said. Nobody talked to me. Nobody talked to me. And I don't think that some of them think it's necessarily a bad idea. What they really were concerned about is the fact that nobody asked them. So I still believe we did the right thing because the social distancing piece is important. It could all be fine tuned, of course. I mean, it's hard to just go out there and do something like this and have it work perfectly the first time. I think we can fine tune it. And I think that's what we ought to talk about, what some options are in terms of potentially fine tuning this whole idea.
Well, thank you. Commissioner Szymanski.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to also start off by saying thank you to Sharon, the chief, and all of the city staff. I could not be more impressed with the job that everyone has done during this time, and so thank you to all of them. I'd like to I guess address the issue of one. Not all of the businesses were considered or talked to, and just how incorrect that is. Yes, Main Street sent it out to their membership and the data that they have, any email addresses. Not only that, but Main Street board members, as well as myself, Commissioner Schlosser, and others, at different periods of time, walked the streets and talked to as many of the businesses that had owners that were present at the time. I went when Main Street put together a survey. I walked around the avenue and got locked out of my Facebook account because I was Facebook searching every single business and sending the survey to them because we had not gotten a response. And it thought that I was spamming at one point. I did so many, so it locked me out. We most certainly did try to get input from as many people as possible. And I will tell you that I think there might be some confusion and definitely misunderstanding that in getting information from people and getting their input, the messaging was very different. So the messaging was, how can we help you? Do you need to utilize outdoor space? Are you hearing from your clients that they're concerned about coming indoors? Would you want to use parking spot? Would you want to put racks on the sidewalk? Those were the types of questions, not, do you want to lose 206 parking places? None of us want to lose 206 parking spots. So the couple individuals that rallied up, folks that many of them did talk to us and thought it was a good idea. But when you pose a question, do you want to lose parking? My answer is going to be no. And that's where many of the comments came back after the fact, was about losing the parking. And that they've had the worst couple days ever in terms of business. Well, we have a problem with people coming here and people feeling safe to come here. If you look at all the other areas the past few days, there's plenty of parking. The problem isn't that we took some parking away. The problem is that people don't feel comfortable coming here, and they're not parking anywhere. Even over the weekend, there were plenty of parking spots on the median, in the median spots, whereas the side was blocked off. So, it's all about messaging, and what we should be doing and the energy that we should be putting in is, how do we tell the public that they can come here and summer safely, because we're taking these extra steps for them to be safe here? Because that's the problem. People aren't coming here because they're concerned about their own health and safety. So that is where we need to put some energy and effort, is the PR aspect of this, and what makes us different than Ocean City, and how we're not Ocean City, and how they can come walk here and social distance. So that's my 2 cents on some of the feedback we've gotten in the past couple of days. Thank you.
Thank you, Edward. Commissioner Byrne.
Well, Commissioner Chanowski, I've got a nickel's worth, so that's going to be a little more than your 2 cents. Edward's last comment about the PR aspect, I think, is really critical. I think one of our next steps really is to figure out how do we, through our communications department, team with the chamber, with Main Street, anyone else that is interested in figuring out how do we best promote a safe environment, an environment where visitors can feel that they're going to be able to stay healthy, they're going to be able to be comfortable, and hear what it is that we're doing. So let me just double back, because I didn't want to forget that important note. I want to add my thank you to just a remarkable job that Sharon and Chief Banks and the entire team in City Hall did in a very, very short period of time. I thought it was just remarkable what happened over the weekend to get us to the point that we are already at from what we talked about only a week ago today. Nothing intentional was done to leave retailers out. But I think as we go on, we have to not be defensive about what we have done to date. Let's learn from it. Let's listen to about 40 retailers who have expressed some everything from annoyance to strong frustration with what we've done. And let's see if there are some things we can do to improve the situation that we have gotten ourselves to. I think we're in a good place, but we do need to listen to those 40 retailers and see if there's anything that really makes sense, that is a viable solution. I have some questions about whether or not customers that visit our retailer shops often park right in front of that shop anyway, because as I observed last weekend, early on, parking places got filled with folks going to the beach. And, that's just a reality of the situation. And it's a reality of the new parking ordinance that we put in, the longer term, up to 12 hours. But, I think rather than kick ourselves around and who did what, I think we did just a heck of a lot. Our city team did a heck of a lot. And let's learn from that. Let's listen to those that are expressing some real frustration, and let's ask them for some constructive solutions also. Because I think what happened in short order was, again, I want to say remarkable, and there has to be a way to now work at improving this in the days and weeks ahead to serve even a larger audience on the downtown streets.
Thank you. Commissioner Sheffer. No, he's blocked for some reason.
Thank you, Mayor. I think this is one, and it's not just a few times, it's many times that it's well worth repeating how quickly and nimbly the city leadership and their teams have responded to our requests for changes. And they do it professionally. They do it with just a lot of integrity and a lot of professionalism, and it just can't be overstated how thankful we should all be for the great services we receive from the city operational team, the police department, fire department, and so I want to make sure that they hear it from all of us. I agree with many of the things that have been said. I guess one of the clarifications that I would make is that, and again, it's in the messaging. We've thought a lot and we've talked a lot about the recommendations and the guidance that we provided to the city manager and the chief about the changes that took place over the last from Thursday through the weekend. It wasn't a knee-jerk reaction to anything. It wasn't trying to accommodate the restaurants over other businesses. It was trying to, as many of others have said today and before today, to attract people here because we are cognizant of the need to practice safe physical distancing. And I purposely went out in the evening, Saturday evening, and walked down to the boardwalk. And I saw a lot of instances where people weren't wearing face masks and should have been, that a lot of people were collecting in larger groups and probably shouldn't have been. And so it's because of those things. And I'm not saying it's malicious or anything. I think it's an adjustment for everybody. But it was another indicator to me that we needed to do something a little bit more extreme and creative in creating safe spaces for pedestrians. And I think signage and education will help guide people from the parking spots that are available to safe places to cross, to get into the identified walking areas. And we'll work it out. The last thing I'll say is that as we consider refinements to what we put in place, is to encourage everybody to think about a block by block view. We all recognize that the composition of the businesses are not consistent from block to block, and that on one block like the north side of Rehoboth Avenue between First and Second Street has one restaurant. Others have more. And so as we look at this and get feedback from all of the businesses and consider making adjustments or refinements, I would encourage all of us to think on a block by block basis to preserve safe distancing as well as achieve the desired objectives to allow the businesses to attract as many patrons safely as they can.
Thank you. Before I go to Commissioner Gay, I'd like to say something myself. I take a bit of issue with the implication that I'm trying to dismantle this project. As I said last week, I want the restaurants, I want the businesses to have the opportunity to get back some of the revenue that they've lost and to move forward. I was there with that as far as the social distancing. I think that's a great idea to put the barriers out there to get people out on walking around. I think with signage, we will have that. I think that takes some time. The thing is that the fires that I talked about putting out are the fact that a number of different businesses, some on that list or a number on that list and others have mentioned the fact that they weren't spoken to. So that's what we have to do going forward is speak to these businesses and try to work it out in such a fashion that makes sense for everybody. We already said we're giving it 15 days and then we'll monitor it and make some adjustments. But we just started yesterday really. And the thing is, a lot of people, as the barriers were going up, they had no idea it was coming with. So I think this is the time, as for communication perspective, is to get out with people, the commissioners walking around, speaking with people. And these are the things that we have to talk about as we move forward. We're not done, but we've got some work to do. And again, I take issue with the implication that I was trying to dismantle this, because we all agreed last week to give the approval to the city manager and her staff to do the work, and they've done that. And now it's our job to get out the word. Commissioner Gay.
Yeah, first of all, I just wanted to say I agree wholeheartedly with what Commissioner Sheffer said about working on a block by block basis. I think a lot of the solutions to the issues can be dealt with by realizing that it's not all the same. You know, that every part of the city, every storefront, every block is not the same. But I made a couple of notes about things as I was listening to it, and I also agree with Commissioner Schlosser about doing the good of many. And in fact, that's part of the problem I'm having, is that, to have these petitions come forward with 95% of the respondents against something we've done, and also to know that when the Main Street survey was done, that was about 54% in favor of the sidewalk dining or something like that. That means 46% of those were against it too. So from what it looks like to me right now, there are more people that are questioning what we've done than there are in favor of it. But also hearing the questions asked kind of answered a question for me. It made me think, oh, that's the reason why we're getting, a lot of complaints, is because we didn't ask the right questions. I mean, if you ask an open-ended question, do you want us to help you? Then of course they're going to say yes. So, and I think a lot of people have responded to that after the fact, that some of the people who wanted this didn't really understand what they were saying that they wanted, or what they were saying yes to. In terms of the people not coming, things just opened yesterday. So I think one of the real tests is going to be this coming weekend, and not necessarily, on Tuesday. Because when I was downtown earlier, absolutely right, I did not see a lot of people in those walkways. But in looking at the overall picture of the businesses too, I know that we have the sense that the ones who are not in favor of the plan are retailers. But that's not all true. When I looked at the signers of the petition, a good half of them are food establishments, some restaurants, some other kinds of food establishments, but not retailers. So it's kind of across the board in different types of business groups. So, I mean, to me, the messaging problem has come from us, not from the city, but it's come from us, and we need to fix it.
Thank you. Commissioner Szymanski.
Thank you, Mayor. Commissioner Gayer, you're absolutely right. It does fall on us, and part of the reason why we have these public meetings where people can participate is that so they can hear the discussions that we're having, what we're deliberating, the options that we're throwing out. And I think at the end of the day, when we took a few weeks of hearing from people, and there being different surveys done, and us talking to businesses and having Zoom meetings, there were many options that we threw out. And some of it was DelDOT and traffic regulations that dictated that we have to close off an entire block and not just sections. So it's important that people understand that we've thought about this from many different angles with many different options, and made many considerations. But now we need to, and I don't think that it was clear in some of our discussions, the public health and safety aspect of this, which is number one. Yes, it's great that we're helping businesses that have struggled, and restaurants can expand, and retailers can go out on the sidewalks and use more space. But the safety of the visitors and the residents of our town are first and foremost. So I think, as we need to tweak and listen to people as we navigate through this, I think we've made the right decision. I think, as we continue to navigate, we need to ask people too, do you want to lose parking spaces? We all know the answer is going to be no. What are your suggestions? What ideas do you have as we navigate through this, so that everyone is a part of the solution? Thank you, Mayor. That's all I have.
Commissioner Calusi?
Yes. I've already, said what I believe, that this was very important, as Commissioner Trosnowski said. It's all about the ability to keep our residents and our visitors and all the people safe who come to our town. That's the number one priority. And so this, I believe we all made the right decision, frankly, to do this for the purpose of social distancing. The fact that, what happened with some businesses that they didn't know about it, that's what we just have to move on from that. Hopefully we don't repeat something like that, that we make sure these are such important decisions that we make sure it's the messaging that people know, that the businesses know what we're doing. I don't want to beat a dead horse on this at all. So one of the things that I want to talk about is, the whole idea about parking. The idea, frankly, that people think that, or businesses think that a parking space in front of their store is used by someone who comes to that store is, I'm sorry, it's not what happens. I mean, people use those spaces and they walk around town and they're not going necessarily to that store. So I don't give much credence to that thought. But what I do think we need to do, it's really important, is we need to increase the usage of the public parking lot by City Hall. That has to, I know that we were trying to, move forward with the sign. We were all excited about the idea of the wayfinding signage being put in place, and I think that could have helped quite a bit. But now we have to do something about signage, and we need to make sure that people use that lot, because it's not being used like it could be. And so I challenge, we need to think about that. Another thing that I want to say is that I guess it was Commissioner Byrne brought up, or Commissioner Sheffer, one of you, brought up the fact that there are people on the boardwalk not wearing face masks. If we are trying to keep people safe in this town, we have summer officers, we have the cadets on the boardwalk. We need to, it's not a suggestion. We have made it a requirement to have face masks on the boardwalk. Now, not to we don't want to cause a lot of problems with people, but at the same time, it's either put a face mask on or get off the boardwalk. I think we really have to figure that out. And Chief, I don't know, maybe this is a challenge that is really a lot harder than I realize, but I think it's critical.
Commissioner Calusi, if I could correct that, I didn't walk on the boardwalk. These were people on Rehoboth Avenue who were close together. I didn't mean to confuse the situation. I walked as far as the boardwalk. My observation, and the many times I've been on the boardwalk since it's been mandatory, is that there's probably a 95% adherence or compliance rate, and
okay.
Very impressive. But it was just as more people come in, as the weather, we had a nice weekend for the most part, that there were a lot of people who weren't practicing safe distancing, and which I thought led credence to having an expanded pedestrian walkway.
Yeah, thank you. But all the same, if we do have those kinds of issues, I'm hopeful, and I don't know because I haven't watched the people on the boardwalk per se. I mean, I've been up there and seen people without them, and mostly, like you say, with them. But we don't want to be in a situation where we're letting some people, quote unquote, get away with it. If it's required, it's required. It's not required on Rehoboth Avenue. It'd be nice if the people did wear them. If they social distance, that's not going to be 100% or even probably 80%. But Chief, if you could address the idea of since the idea of people wearing face masks in the boardwalk, that'd be great.
Yes, thank you. Actually, I would agree with the number. About 90% is what I've been seeing up there, as well as Captain Buxton with the lifeguards since we've reopened up. There is a segment that did not have them on. I am very proud that the seasonal officers, cadets, have handed out over 900 masks that were supplied to us through the state. And we continue to have them each day in our pocket in the bag and to hand out. So we have done that since the very beginning.
Great.
And trying to educate. I think it's important too to remember, because I've been out there most days, and people have come up to me and say, "Hey, this person does have a mask on." Remember, there is a certain elderly population that does not have to if they have a health risk. And the ones that are really against it, they bring it to our attention quickly that it's a health risk to them, and they do not feel comfortable wearing it. We really can't argue with them if that's what they come out and say. And then children at a certain age do not have to. So,
Right.
but for the most part, I think it is working. Can it be better? Absolutely. We do have masks down at the lifeguard shack too, so they're passing that out as people go to the shack for health assistance, or if they're using the restroom there, we see it, we're mentioning that. So I think we are getting pretty good compliance out there. Yes, there's always work to be done. The signage stuff that the state has given us, as well as what the city has put up, I think is working. From what I've seen, especially in the weekends, when we've asked people to put a mask on that comes off the beach, it's usually in their pocket. And they say, okay. And I'm actually very surprised and happy to report not one person has argued with me out there as far as when I've asked them to put the mask on. They've either didn't have it and we provided one, they were thankful, or they went in and put their mask on. So
Good.
I think it's positive.
I wouldn't
Good.
argue with you either.
Thank you, Chief. Commissioner Schlosser.
Yes, thanks, Mayor. Yes, I do want to carry on from, I thought Commissioner Shanowski and Commissioner Burns specifically, everybody had good points, but specifically they both had good points. I did get a little defensive off the bat because it's a hard problem, and I think the worst thing we can do for the community is to kind of dwell on what could have been, done better. Well, do it better in the future, but really, I think we need to talk about going forward. And first and foremost, again, as Commissioner, I think it was Calusi said, this decision and my point about we have to do what's for the good of the many versus just the few is that we have to take into account public health and safety first. And I think when we do that, more people are going to feel comfortable coming into our town and going to the retailers and walking around. So to me, as we talk about this and think about communications and messaging, that is the most important point that we have to get out there. And Commissioner Burns specifically talked about having a good PR campaign or a good communication strategy. And what I want to really do with my time here before we get into these other important topics that City Manager Lynn wants us to is what we talk about communication a lot. We talked about it at the last meeting and how important it was to get the correct message out. But what are we going to do now to get that message out? Can we come to an agreement here on maybe it's Commissioner, Dick, I know you have a billion things, but maybe it's Edward and Dick and somebody, but some group that works with Chris to really kind of focus on this and get some good communication. Listen to the businesses who felt their voice wasn't heard and ask them what they'd like to do as part of this going forward. But I'd really like to come out with some action here as opposed to just saying we need communication and better PR around this. So I would love to have us talk about this and figure out some way of doing this better so the right messaging is out there, the right communication. So I don't know what that is, but I'd like to figure out something concrete as a way ahead. Thank you.
Commissioner Szymanski.
Thank you. Yeah, my point was going to be okay. I think we've all made good points and we've talked, but now we need to move forward. What do we do? What's next step? So I do. We talked a little bit about we've all witnessed the walkways are not really being used all that much yet, but we also don't have the crowds of people here yet. So just a couple of data points that I think are important. So many of the hotels, although they could have started having rooms booked last night, did not. Some of them are starting to, I think, tomorrow, Thursday, and many aren't having anyone until Friday. So I think this weekend we'll start to see more people in town, as well as some of the rentals. You had some start right away yesterday, but a lot of them are starting to dwindle in this week. So I think it'll be helpful this weekend to see how the crowds of people are managing with social distancing and wearing the masks and utilizing the walkways. And yeah, so I guess, what do we do now? What is the communication plan? And I think it's important that we know that before we go into this weekend, and people that are visiting here know to utilize these areas, or these areas, walkways are for social distancing, etc.
Thank you, Edward. I understand the communication plan, whatever people are talking about, and we've already talked, the city manager spoke a little bit about it, the chief spoke a little bit about it, about signage going in to let people know about the walkways, what it's for. But what I'm wondering is, above and beyond that, what communication are we looking for? The barriers are up. We've been working with the restaurants. The restaurants know what they can do out there. They're working with Dennis on their licenses and whatnot. The shops that we've heard from, a number of them have been looking for the fact that they wanted to see parking spaces out front. That's not going to change anytime soon. So what is it we're going to communicate to them, as well as the restaurants? I think we've communicated to. What is it we're going to communicate to the retail shops? That we're going to work with them. However, we can't pull out any barriers at this point in time. We can allow them, and I think Dennis has been good with that, as far as allowing them space out on the sidewalk, much like the restaurants, of 3 feet. I think he's also spoken with a number of them that may want more footage out on the sidewalk, and he's asked for plans, and they can put in a request, and he'll work with them. But again, what is the rest of what we want to communicate to them? Because again, we're pretty much so set on Rehoboth Avenue. When we gave the city manager and her staff the ability to go out and put those in and work with the restaurants, work with the retail on spacing and whatnot. That's what I'm wondering about, because it's past the date that we did it. So, I mean, this is something that I think we have to work with at least for the next 15 days, could be as much as 60 days, and who knows. And I think it'll work in the long run. And I agree with Commissioner Schwarzkowski that as of this weekend, because, many rentals will start this week, but they'll really start next weekend. Same with the hotels. We will have more people. And I think as people are walking on the sidewalk and realize that with the retail and the restaurants, that it's pretty tight on the first 2 blocks of Rehoboth Avenue, I think people will use those walkways that are out in the street behind the barrier. And I think that'll be very good, because it's much more space than the sidewalks presently with things on them. So, I think it'll work going forward. I think it's just we have to continue with what our path forward is. What else is it that we want to communicate? I mean, should we get together with the chamber? Should we get together with Main Street and continue to just tell the businesses through those agencies that the barriers are up there? We hear you. We're listening. I don't know that there's a lot of things that we can change at this point in time, and we just want to see how the summer goes, the first 2 weeks at least. So, and that's, that's what I wanted to say. It's just kind of, I'm looking for, what is it that we're looking for people to communicate? Commissioner Schlosser.
Yes, thanks, Mayor. That's a good question. So I think it's more of a strategic communication than just a tactical continuing to talk, although it's both. It's the broader communication and messaging. Maybe it's press releases, maybe it's working with the chamber and getting the same message to everybody about why we did this. I mean, and it was for public health and safety, getting it out to the community, to the guests, getting it out to the hotels so they can share it with the guests that, hey, we set this up to be safer for you. Get out and walk around. Get out and walk around on the new pedestrian walkway. So it's, first of all, a messaging to a broader audience and a PR campaign around that messaging. On a little more of a tactical note, part of the issue that I saw when I was out this weekend was folks are driving down, Rehoboth Avenue, and there's, of course, the median strip and the horseshoe parking. But what I think the wayfinding is gonna accomplish, and what we intended it to accomplish, was to redirect people coming down Rehoboth Avenue before they get to 2nd Street to parking down by the senior center, to that lot, or to the convention center lot, as somebody mentioned. But I think putting up some sort of really, really visible signage there, again, I hope we have the wayfinding soon. If not, maybe just some big orange signs or something that directs people to the side streets or the parking lots before they get to 2nd Street. So that's kind of a broad answer to your question, or what I saw the communication plan being, as well as a tactical need, which is the parking directions. So that's what I wanted to say. Thanks.
Thank you. Commissioner Szymanski.
So I tried to say this initially, and maybe I didn't do a very good job. And I think maybe it's more, the communication plan is to tell the businesses that we're looking at the big picture and the overall health of our city. But it's really us having a marketing plan. And this is what I was saying earlier in my initial comment about, we need to brand Rehoboth as being a safer place to be. Don't go to Ocean City, Maryland. Don't go to other cities. Summer safely here, because we are taking these measures to make it safe for you to be here. So it's, I guess, yes, we need to communicate with our business community better, but we need to brand our city as being a safe place to be. And that's how we're helping the businesses, as to get more people to come here to shop and to patronize them. So how we do that, I don't know. I talked to Carol from the chamber earlier today. Maryland has a big budget where they just had a commercial about how they're reopening and what they're doing. Delaware, we don't have that type of resource or money to have commercials made and stuff like that. So how we get that message out, besides social media and things like that, I don't know. But that's what we need to do. It's a marketing plan. It's branding us as a safe community to visit.
Thank you. Commissioner Gay.
Yeah, and I actually want to move on to some specifics of the very questions that the city manager asked in the beginning about the boardwalk and 1st Street and some of the other the details we need to talk about today, as well as any possible changes in the plan that's already been made. But before I say, let me just make a couple of last points. First of all, if we wanted to do what was the maximum for public health and safety, we just close down the streets and make it all pedestrian. And some towns have done that. They've closed off entire streets. So while I appreciate the fact that the health and safety and social distancing is an important element of what we're doing, let's not fool ourselves. We got into this to help the restaurants and the other businesses expand, and we can do both. I'm not saying we can't do both, but let's not base decisions that may not have been good just on public health and safety, because from a standpoint of where they're walking, all we did was move it. I mean, if the sidewalks are going to be crowded because retail and restaurants are expanding onto them, and we've put the walkway in the parking lane, we haven't created any more distance. All we've done is moved it so that they can safely walk. So, we have two goals here, and we should not hide behind the goal to help the businesses by saying it's all about safety, because it's all about both. But in addition to that, what several businesses have expressed to me is that it's not about the parking for them, because I would hope most understand that the chances of somebody being able to park directly in front of their store is not very good. But they've expressed a couple of other things, which is that window shopping, that if you can't walk in front of a store, then you miss seeing what you might be interested in going in and looking at and buying, and that's a real detriment to the walkway being where it is. That's one. And another factor was just that if they're making use of the outdoor space available to them, they have to hire staff to manage that. So that's an additional expense for them. But in terms of the communications plan, I think whatever we come out with today, we have experts on staff, just as the experts on safety and engineering and everything have gone through since last Tuesday's meeting to put in place this plan. If we want to have a broad-based communications plan for the rest of the summer, including branding and all of the signage, I think we put that back to the city manager and the communications director and let the experts come back to us next week with a plan, because what we need, our task today is to come up with some sort of fix that we can be proud going forward. We can't, all the PR in the world is not going to change the fact that you've got, 40 or 50 businesses truly at a disadvantage. And, PR is not going to help the empty storefronts if that's the result. Okay. So we just need to try to come out with a plan that we can, proudly communicate going forward. But I'd like to go to the specifics of what we need to do next.
Thank you. Commissioner Byrne.
Yeah, I'm not sure I have any more to add after the last 4 or 5 people have kind of covered the waterfront and have done it well, by the way. We can talk these things to death and go in circles, like we're pretty good at some weeks. Yes. Signage is critical, and maybe this is a good,
because what it requires to make those kinds of changes on the street. A lot of coordination, it's a lot of work, so my compliments there. Let me tell you what we are doing and what we can do. We are already working on a commercial. We are working with Dr. Tam at BB because we wanted part of our outreach to the visitor to be safety. And he is the best person I know of and the board knows of to make that happen. So there's been contact there. We have a scheduled meeting, and our hope is that we're selling both fun, beach, and safety. So know that there's 2 parts to this. One would be a commercial. Our problem there, of course, is funding, but we are reaching out to some other funding sources to see how we'd make a commercial happen. The other is a storyboard, and we can use everything from our visitor blast, our Facebook, all the social media to get that storybook out. That also is about not only having fun, but being safe. And a thank you.
Mr. Mayor, Carol, could you hold on 1 second? Mayor, I've got a note from someone in the public that the live stream was down.
Yeah, we just found out about that. That's being worked on. Hopefully that'll be back up momentarily.
I just want to make sure that you were aware.
Yes, thank you very much. Carol?
Should I continue?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, please.
Okay. So just know that this has already been a big issue for our members and at the board level, and that is the direction we are going. We are best used as disseminators of information. So if you have the information and you want the information sent out, if it's clearly defined that this is who requests this or what they want sent out, we're there for you. That's what we do. And we are best used for the visitor and the marketing of the area. And that's why this issue of safety that you're talking about came up. We wanted to say thank you to everybody that's worked so hard to keep us safe, and that's where Dr. Tam came in. And right now it's the funding source. The social media and the things we can do under our umbrella are not an issue funding wise. It's that commercial. And that's what we're working on.
Thank you, Carol. Carol, I'm sure you had your normal comments when you signed up. Do you want to go ahead with those?
Well, actually, I just wanted to be on board in case, but I will tell you, I wanted to make sure that everyone knew that when we send out information that says contact someone else, blank, who the someone else is, it's because they're the best people to answer the question. We're disseminators of a lot of information on a lot of different subjects. So just know it's not meant as a any kind of in any way. It's just that we are best disseminators to the people who give us the information. We can't know everything. We try, but we can't know everything.
Thank you. Carol,
Okay.
that's great. I'm so glad to hear that you're doing that commercial. That's wonderful. Thank you so much.
We're trying.
Thank you. And while we're working on the YouTube situation, I'm going to go to the other two callers. Tom Evans, are you there? Is he still on? Tom Evans,
He's not on. I don't see him listed.
I see him on there.
Who's on there?
Oh, you do? Oh, there he is.
yes. Tom Evans? I'll go to Rick Perry. I'll come back to Tom Evans, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Appreciate the opportunity to say a few words. I also want to express my appreciation to the city staff and Chief Banks and his department for what I observed to be the really terrific work they were doing this weekend to prepare for the opening on June 1st yesterday, and the terrific job they did last night in ensuring that we had a peaceful protest and people had the right to exercise their First Amendment rights without any problems. I have to say that I hope that the businesses, both retailers and restaurants, understand that a survey is never 100% inclusive. It is gathering information from a sample of participants and then generalizing that information, to a larger population. It would be nice if we had the time to communicate with each and every business and solicit their comments and their ideas, but we are dealing with an unprecedented time here. The COVID-19 crisis, as well as the economic crisis that is severely harming our businesses in this community. And I sit here wondering all the time if something isn't done to help our businesses rather than just let things go as they were, what kind of a community we will have in 5 or 10 years. And so I think that the Board of Commissioners did the right thing at your last meeting in deciding what you did. And I just hope that the businesses, both retailers and restaurants, will work with you and that they will continue to be flexible and to understand the pressures that you're under from so many different angles, and that you are trying to do the right thing for everyone, businesses as well as our visitors and our residents. So you just give this a chance. Hopefully it will all work out. I also, I want to say something. Commissioner Calusi made a point about the parking, and there was a lot of discussion at the last meeting about, taking, the parking spaces and losing that revenue for the city and all. But I think Commissioner Calusi made a very valid point particularly going to the 12-hour parking. We all know that everyone who comes here is primarily early in the day, on weekends especially, focused on getting to the beach. And now that they can park for 12 hours, and everything you hear all the time is people don't want to walk. They want to be as close to the beach as possible. And so I agree with Commissioner Cluzy that I think it's a rare event that someone is parking in front of a particular retailer to go and shop in that retailer's establishment. And so we do have to do something to encourage people to park a little further away. And, you know, heck, if it means you get a little more exercise, then that's better for your health in any event. And I hope that people will realize that. One last point on marketing. Yes, I do think the Chamber and Main Street have a very vital role to play in the marketing aspects and informing people of you know, what we've done here, why we've done it. But I also think that the city needs to take a role in that as well. And I'm not exactly sure how to bring that all together, but the city has some resources that neither the Chamber nor Main Street has. And you know, the city is probably in a better position to be able to knock on every single door of every single business to let them know what's going on. And so I would hope that it would be not just the Chamber and Main Street, but that the city would also take an active role in that. And I guess that's one last comment, and probably part of the marketing. I am forever and always amazed at the lack of participation in the meetings by the public. You know, for the last several weeks, it seems to have been Carol, Tom Evans, myself, and one or two other people who have signed up to participate actively in these special virtual meetings. And to all of those who complain all the time that they don't know what's going on, you know, I have always, in my political activities, said to people since the early 60s, you know, if you don't get involved, don't complain. And I would just encourage people to be more active participants. And whatever the city has to do to make more information available, whether it's through press releases, television interviews, radio interviews, that these meetings are taking place and you can sign up and you can participate and have your voice heard. That should be done. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick. And appropriately, the YouTube has been up since you started. Tom Evans, are you there?
No, he doesn't seem to be.
Tom Evans, one more time.
Okay, going once, going twice.
Okay, we're going to go back to what the city manager asked before we take this discussion any further. There are two things. One being first, a couple of the businesses along the boardwalk have also asked to be part of this project and to take some space off the boardwalk. And so we need to give the city manager a response to that request. You know, basically from my perspective, as I look at this, the boardwalk, especially north and south, we are already very narrow. So from a social distancing perspective, we're already pretty narrow on the boardwalk. If we were to narrow the wider part of the boardwalk, to take up maybe tables or racks, I think that becomes a little bit problematic, especially as we get more and more people on the beach in the summer, walking up and down the boardwalk, whether it's in the morning with bicycles, but more importantly during the day where there's people crossing back and forth. But that's just my perspective. So we need to think about the idea of that to give the city manager a direction on that. Commissioner Cluzy.
Yes, thank you. As far as the boardwalk is concerned, I can't really see allowing any of the businesses to set up tables on the boardwalk. whether it be restaurants or retail. And here's my reasoning. As far as and correct me if I'm wrong, as far as dine in, the only ones I can think of are grottos and the other one, which is,
Obies,
I'm sorry?
Obies,
Obies, yes, thank you.
Victoria.
So they both, Obies has outdoor dining now, so that's not an issue. Grottos has outdoor dining as well, may not be on the boardwalk, but so I see that nothing changes there. I realize it's a 30% situation for them, but they do have some outdoor space. And as crowded as the boardwalk gets, it gets every bit as crowded, if not more so, than this Rehoboth Avenue. So I think it would not be in the best interest of, in terms of the health and safety of our visitors and our residents. So that's my opinion on that.
thank you. Commissioner Szymanski.
Thank you, Mayor. I guess I have more of a question for the city manager, in what exactly she's hearing or being asked for from some of the businesses. Is it retail shops that want the 3 feet? Is it restaurants that want outdoor dining, and how much space, et cetera?
Yeah, the only one we've heard from was Obies, and that was in the very beginning. And we just told them no decision was made yet.
Well, from my perspective, and I'll say one thing that I guess will strike a little bit with some of the feedback we got from those 40 businesses or so, and one of them, and I'll give an example. I did speak to the owners of Zelke's for a very long time, and they make a perfectly good point that one of the reasons why they're opposed to blocking off the parking spots and having outdoor dining and walkways for the other restaurants on Wilmington, Rehoboth Avenue in Baltimore is that, the people on the boardwalk pay prime real estate and prime rent to have that pedestrian walkway, which is the boardwalk. So us doing that, allowing pedestrian walkways in others areas is a little bit of a, giving something to the businesses that they pay prime rent for. And I can appreciate that. But in terms of restaurants on an individual basis on, like Obies, for example, that although it seems like it's outside, if there's 3 walls, it may be considered indoors and subject to the 30%. I don't know, but I would leave it to the city manager's discretion, like she has on Baltimore and Wilmington and the other side streets on what's allowed on a case-by-case basis.
Okay, well, I was actually deferring this to the commissioners because I know once we allow it for one, then all the retailers were also, and I'm certainly not in favor of that. The safety issues, we have a narrow north and a narrow south end. We have trash trucks going along there, the beach patrol, people walking in different directions. So that's why if the commissioners wanted it, then I was deferring to you. I'm not in favor of it.
Thank you. Commissioner Schlosser.
I kind of wanted to go down the path sort of Commissioner Szymanski, but you kind of gave me some more food for thought, Sharon. Sharon, do you think even in the narrow areas you could give like at least the retailers, kind of a little bit of like flexibility with putting some sort of racks against their storefront? I mean, could the majority of them do that? Or do you believe that's not realistic in some of the more narrow areas?
I think there's too many issues on the boardwalk with safety and people and bicycles and wind conditions. It's not a good area.
Okay. Is that Commissioner Schlosser?
That answered my question. So I'm kind of, again, along the reason, as Commissioner Paluzzi pointed out earlier, there was two reasons for all the decisions we're making here, and that is one, public safety and health, and two, the businesses. And I think we have to put the safety and the health and take the city manager's recommendations into strong account here. And I hadn't even, to be honest, thought about the garbage trucks and all the implications of that as well. So I'm kind of inclined to not include the boardwalk at this point, but to continue to monitor any type of requests that come in. That's where I am.
Thank you. Commissioner Byrne.
Yes, just to quickly say that I support the way Commissioner Cluzy started out talking about this, and I certainly support Manager Lynn's thoughts on this. It's critical that we're consistent on the boardwalk. We can't do something for one at one end of the boardwalk and not for the other. So I just think for safety, for social distancing, a host of good reasons that the boardwalk is not the place to have either retail or dining going on. There's already a lot of food coming out onto the boardwalk from all of the takeout places.
Thank you. Commissioner Sheffer.
Yeah, I for all the reasons that have been stated, and especially what the city manager has mentioned, I would be in favor of not allowing the retail operators and the businesses and the restaurants to expand onto the boardwalk. I think where it's broader towards the center of Rehoboth Avenue, there's already t-shirt racks out and things like that. I'm assuming that what's been done in the past would continue, but it would be nothing more than what's been done in years past. Is that correct?
Yes, I'd say so.
Okay. So, I mean, I know it's hard and I feel badly for the impacted businesses, but I think for all the reasons that have been stated, I'm in favor of not expanding on the boardwalk.
I agree with that.
Commissioner Schlosser. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Well, I just saying I agree with it.
Okay.
Oh, you agree with it? Okay.
I wanted to ask a quick question, kind of related to it, and maybe this is part of the solution. But have we put all the benches back on the boardwalk and on the streets, or what's the plan? Or excuse me, on the sidewalks. What's the plan going forward with those, Sharon?
The benches are not all back. We needed to see first with the barriers in place where we could access different sites with the restaurants using them. Sure. We have given permission for some to add benches, city benches, so that when there's requests, we look at them on a case-by-case basis, but we've kind of stopped taking requests because we've had, we need to reassess this whole barrier situation and where best to place them. So the answer is no, they're not all out. They're not all out at the bandstand area. We still have the issue of social distancing on Rehoboth Avenue and all the side streets.
And how about the boardwalk?
Same.
No, they're not all out on the boardwalk either.
And we're still just kind of assessing that relative to social distancing, or what's the plan for the boardwalk?
Well, we are right now, so that's the best I can tell you. We haven't had a huge population on either of the city streets or on the boardwalk, and if more are warranted, we'll put them out. We are, again, we have this intensive process, labor-intensive process of disinfecting the benches, which we do on a regular basis. So we need the staff availability to be able to do that.
Okay, thank you. You answered my question.
And Commissioner Gay, did I hear that you agree with what's been said?
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I'll add to that is clearly there's no room to expand the boardwalk like you can expand into the park. You can't very well go on the dune. So the space is so limited that, yes, I think that we can't have the dining on the boardwalk.
Okay, so thank you. You know
Mayor,
about the-
I don't think I commented either way on.
I thought you did.
I agree with the city manager's recommendation, and we should follow her recommendation.
Thank you. The next is First Street. You want to just give a rundown of what you said about First Street?
So specifically on First Street, I think right now we have one request that's outstanding. Is that correct? For outdoor seating?
To the pond and Gould.
So two, yeah.
Okay.
Two outstanding requests.
Okay. I'm not sure you were able to hear that. So we have two requests, the pond and Ghoulies Restaurant. In walking that with Director of Public Works and the police chief, the issue is the sidewalk is very narrow. If we use the same distance and remove the parking, the parallel parking area, there's some potholes that we could fix, but it's a different situation than on Rehoboth Avenue. It's very narrow in those spots. So I'll ask the chief to comment further on that.
Yes, thank you. When we went out there and measured, basically a barricade is 24 inches. So when you put that in a parking space, you only leave 3 foot 6 inches for walkway. So I think it's going to be almost impossible to put tables on the sidewalk there. That's not saying you can't put the barricade and still keep the social distance that we started this conversation with, to give more room to walk back and forth. But in front of where the pond is, the road's got to be resurfaced there. There's too many potholes and uneven and things like that. When we're looking at that and for some dumpsters and just people walking with canes and so on. Again, that can be done. The other issue where it gets skinnier there towards Wilmington Avenue, we're going to get the slope of a handicap ramp to go back up. It's going to have to come quite a bit further out than some of the other ones. Again, it can be worked on, but the main thing is the whole street there, we'd have to barricade all the way down, and there's only 3 foot 6 inches walkway there after you put the barricade in. So you're not going to be able to walk back and forth and keep any type of distance. And that's our main concern there, as well as on the other side of south of First Street. Again, just when you put the barricade, you just don't have that room in there. If you don't use the sidewalk for walking at all, and it's for restaurants or whatever the case may be, I don't know you have enough room.
Thank you, Chief. Commissioner Schlosser?
I know this is out there, but again, what I'm about to ask, so please just bear with me, Chief and Sharon. So it seems to me overall that we're putting a couple restaurants at a disadvantage by not letting them have the outdoor seating, both Ghoulies as well as the pond, as well as we've heard from the ice cream store, Double Dippers there, that they really don't have enough room for social distancing while people, are trying to get into the store. So another need for more of an expansion of space. I don't know how to solve that one on the north side of First Street, but since we actually really are going to discourage folks from going down Rehoboth Avenue from 2nd Street to the boardwalk driving down there, do we really need a right-hand turn lane on First Street, or could we have just a straight, one, kind of a one way there and expand a little bit more into, the southbound lane? I know that's a lot, but I'm just wondering if there's a way to, to do that, because we really, again, don't want people turning right onto Rehoboth down onto the First Street for the most part. So I'm just wondering, bottom line, that's one idea, and it's probably not going to work, Chief. I know you're probably just, oh my God, Commissioner Schlosser, stop coming up with great ideas. But what else can we do? Is where I'm going, because I think we have to accommodate the two restaurants and do something for the double dippers or whoever else requires some more space.
I'm not not at all. I mean, as far as when you come up with ideas, we can talk through all of them. My first thought is when you come to the intersection, there's things underneath the ground that trip the lights and help with all that. So at some point you have to get back to that section. So I'd have to get an engineer. That's not my expertise, obviously, as far as, they do that by using flaggers when they have to go around and kind of start manual. You'll still have the light, but again, there's certain angles where the trips are underground. So
Got it.
I think something has to be changed. And I agree. If somebody comes up with a good idea to expand out, we'll look at it. But how it's designed there through the state and roadway was made, and that's my biggest concern that comes to the forefront, is just making the lights work correctly.
I figured it was more complicated than at face value, of course. So thank you for at least thinking about it for a minute.
Chief,
Yeah.
I believe, and I could be wrong, that those parking spaces are a little bit less wide than a normal parking space there on the south west side of First Street. And I think they're about 6 feet, which would leave 4 feet of walking space. So I guess I think you said it was 3 feet, so I'm missing a foot. I just want to understand that.
It was about 3.6. Kevin, you can correct me if you want to. We had the wheel measurement out there when we did it. We measured from the curb out, and they are skinnier, and that's why I think when you're out there on any given day, if the vehicle's parked there, you see the cars hanging over the street, the ditch there, the side mirrors hang over, and also, if you ever notice people's driving habits, they kind of cross to the center anyway, just because it's so tight there. They are not true accurate spaces, except for maybe a compact vehicle, but still even the width issue is the main problem out there.
And I think there's
Yes, it's
5.
about 3.6 is what we measure.
There's 5 spots there, I believe, right?
Which side are we talking about right now?
On still the southwest side of Rehoboth. So it sounds like those parking spots are unsafe anyway. Why don't we just extend the sidewalk out and get rid of those parking spots?
Yeah, that's just what I was going to actually ask is what's the difference if there's cars parked there, or if we block it off, it's still unsafe one way or another going down there. But Edward said it better, so I'll unraise my hand.
I think where it comes down to, there's a car there, so it's when you get out, it's fine. It's just near the curbing and all that. There's big dips and potholes. Again, that can be fixed. It's got to be milled and resurfaced. Kevin can speak more about that from public superintendent. But usually if the car's parked over, it's more on the inside, and normally people will be using the sidewalk, so it doesn't become an issue. But yes, it can be fixed.
So basically, let me try to see what you're saying. You're basically saying put the barriers up, no restaurants use the sidewalks, and the city fix the street. Is that what you're suggesting? So that both the sidewalk and the street is for walking? Or am I confused? Commissioner Gay?
Oh, no, I misunderstood too. So I would like that question answered before I say what I was going to say.
I'm not, go ahead.
Mayor, who were you asking the question to?
Either you or Commissioner Schlosser had suggested, yes, put up the barriers anyway and widen the sidewalk or the walking area.
No,
But am I confused?
No, my suggestion was just a long-term solution that if those parking spots there are not the proper width of a normal parking spot and they're essentially encroaching into the street, that we just remove them and widen the sidewalk there. Obviously,
So you're talking about construction.
yeah, this is, I guess, longer term
Long-term.
than where this started off at. But I hope that we could find a solution to help those businesses there, because there's no way that either one of them will survive at 30% capacity inside the restaurants. And I want to keep in mind all of the other factors here, but so I'm just hoping that we can come up with a solution.
But again, remember, as the chief said, as you put the barrier up right at the line of the parking space, it takes 2 feet. There's 3.5 feet left to the curb. And then the sidewalks there aren't that wide anyway. I think right in front of the pond, they're a little bit wider, so he could probably put some on the sidewalk, maybe 2 tables for 2. But again, I'm not as familiar with it maybe as Dennis is. But again, if we're considering putting tables on the sidewalk to take up the space on the sidewalk, then the walking area that we're creating for social distancing is much smaller than the sidewalk is currently, being 3.5 feet or so. So, I mean, it's something, I mean, I think in the long term, yes, we probably, I think it's come up in the past to think about First Street being a one-way street, but I think that's a long-term situation. We could fix the parking. But as of right now, if we put the barriers up, then from the curb to the barrier is only 3.5 feet. If we were going to use both the sidewalk and the street, yes, it widens it for social distancing, but then there you can't use it on the sidewalk for the businesses. So it's I guess what the city staff is saying is that it's probably with barriers too small to help out the businesses.
Right. That's what it seems to me.
Can I ask one other question on a possible solution?
Sure.
Is that side of the street needs to be resurfaced anyway, and there's going northbound. There's 2 lanes. Could we just extend the median line, take away one of those lanes going northbound, and then we can come out with the barriers a little bit further? I mean, it sounds like that street needs to be resurfaced anyway. It is pretty bad.
Let me ask just for another, I just need a piece of information. Do we know the width of that sidewalk? I'm sure we do, but does anybody happen to have that information that they could tell me what it is?
I'm looking.
Hold on one second. Dennis is checking the applications.
And the reason why I'm asking, it may not be helpful at all, but I'm thinking is if you could just put some 2 tops against the side of the building. So you're not going to get seating for 4, but if you could put some 2 tops along the side of the building, will that give you enough space that people could actually walk on the sidewalk and,
Very narrow. Dennis is saying it's very narrow. He's unable to give us a number.
so in Dennis, in your opinion, the idea of 2 tops against the side of the building wouldn't work?
He's coming over to speak to you now. Hold on, please.
So, yeah, in my opinion, it's going to be too narrow to work. Even with the plan that's been submitted, with tables basically up against the curb, with seating right there, you're not going to be able to keep that 6 feet of social distancing with people in the walkway if we put the barriers out there. So it's a tough spot.
Yeah, so you're telling me if they put two tops against the side of the building, there's not enough space for people to walk and for those two tops, which are what? They're like 24 inches wide?
Yeah, if they're gonna use the two tops up against the building, there should be no issue, but you still, if they're gonna serve alcohol out there, they're gonna have to have barriers, so, to barrier off those tables.
I see. So you can't do that
And
with
really-
like roping or anything like that, some sort of rope to,
Correct. Correct.
Okay.
So, and to
I'm
really
sorry.
give you an accurate answer, we'd have to go out there and do some more measuring.
okay. It was just an idea of perhaps, to give them something. So, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Dennis. Commissioner Gay.
Yeah, just a couple of things. First of all, we just spent time talking about how we couldn't do it on the boardwalk because there wasn't enough space. And so there are businesses there that are just going to have to accept that. And I will point out that at least one, I can't remember if there were others, but at least one business that's on First did not want blocked off. And that was north of Rehoboth Avenue, but still, was one. And I know that there was a business that applied on Second and was unable to move outside because there wasn't enough walk. So while we're spending all this time trying to help when we've just, two very specific ones, when we've just spent a lot of time talking about ones that are going to have to accept the limitations, then I guess these are going to have to accept the limitations as well.
I take some issue with that because First, as I said, Grotto has multiple restaurants, some with outdoor seating. I don't think they're going to suffer from the 30%. Most of that is carry out anyway from the boardwalk. The other one being Obie's, they have some outdoor space, obviously, but probably not as much as Grotto, but there's no place to put in that specific place, there's no place to put tables anyway.
I was actually mostly referring to the one on Second for that. That there is a business on Second that wanted to expand and they couldn't either because of the sidewalk. So all I'm saying is, there are different characteristics in different places that make it not doable and or desirable by some. So that's all.
However, let me just add, it does take the deliberate conversation, I think, for us to make sure that
Yeah.
we're treating everyone fairly and giving, equitable consideration to these reasonable requests that people are making.
I'd like to go back.
I agree with that.
Yeah, I'd like to go back to a couple things that were said and ask Chief and Dennis and Sharon a couple questions. One, Edward, has always said it much better than I did, but so if we have to pave that road anyway, and we could work with changing the light signals, why not eliminate one of those two lanes, that right-hand lane, and just you either turn right or go straight there. And that would allow you to put a little bit wider parking space and or barrier space there. And there's other options like, because social distancing's part of the issue. You could make, north, the southbound side one way and northbound, and then, northbound, the westbound side one way, walking, and then the eastbound side the other direction. There's a lot of, and I'm not even sure if those make sense, but there seems to be other options in this area to consider. And the two tops for Dennis, what if they just use some sort of rope, like a rope or something, as the barrier if they're going to serve alcohol? Is that something, or does it have to be some sort of more permanent type barrier?
No, a rope is acceptable, but you just have to remember that it's got to be far enough away from the tables so that the wait staff can safely get in and out of the building and to serve those tables as well. So you're going to be taking up, another couple of feet
Okay,
on
same as
top
a
of those
barrier.
tables. So, like I said, I'll go over and do some more measuring and see what they got going over there.
How about if we allow Dennis to speak to the two places that have asked for space, and I guess we just keep thinking about it, and we'll bring it back up next week. Because, you know, going in and changing the structure of the street, changing the structure of the lights, isn't something that gets done overnight. And I think we'd have more information from Dennis in the week rather than, you know, more than a week to get that type of work done for the street. Is that something that is acceptable to speak to? Because, I mean, again, it's just for two businesses. And again, where it is structured right now, the repaving that the chief was talking about is right by the curb. It's not in the middle of the street. And taking up the traffic lanes as we have it now, I would think is pretty difficult to do today without some kind of engineering planning. But that's my opinion. So, Commissioner Calusi, did you have your hand up, or did you
No,
speak?
it was from last time. Thank you.
Rick Perry is on the line and wanted to say something. Can you let him in? Rick Perry, please.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Just one thought that I have with respect to dealing with the problems with the street area on First. If you were to close off those parking spaces, would it be possible, at least on a temporary basis, to put some steel plates down to cover up the areas that have potholes and allow for people to safely still walk there? That would then give you additional walking space and open up things a little bit more on the sidewalk for those establishments. Just a thought. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick. I mean, I think that's a thought, but again, the space in the street would only be 3.5 feet, even with the plates on there. And again, I think what the plan is from the people at the pond that put their plan was to take the sidewalk. And again, just like on Rehoboth Avenue, we put the barriers up to create a walking space to social distance, which on Rehoboth Avenue is probably in the neighborhood of 10 feet from the barrier, if not more, from the barrier to the curb. This would only be 3.5 feet from the barrier to the curb. So I think that would be, you know, a lot less that's on the sidewalk right now. Commissioner Szymanski.
Mayor, related, I understand that Dennis has to go back over there and we'll need to talk to the owners of both places and measure. I just would like us to kind of agree that if something major needs to be changed, obviously it comes back to us for approval, but I hope that this, you know, the city manager and Dennis have some leeway and authority here to work with the business owners and try to find a solution rather than, you know, just delaying it another week. If they can come to some reasonable solution. So I would just hope that we think about that. And again, we spent a lot of time talking about the southwest side, and not much yet on the north side of the street. And I've gotten several messages from businesses over there that tables aside, they don't have room for social distancing for people standing there waiting either to get into their store or Double Dippers, you know, has, you know, a line for ice cream and stuff like that. There's just no place for people to go right now. And they'd like us to do something about it.
Well, just as Sharon and her staff did last week, working with all the businesses, I would assume that they would do the same with the two on the south west side of the street. On the north side, again, are you suggesting putting the barriers there to have walking, or are you suggesting putting the barriers so you can have tables? Because again, the tables, any kind of area that you put in for walking, if you put in tables, you're basically a zero-sum game.
Yeah, again, it's case by case, you know, block by block, side by side, I guess. I think on the north side, you're just looking for social distancing space. I'm sorry, that's on the west side. On the east side of the street, I don't think anyone has asked. That part of the sidewalk is a little bit wider, and I'm not sure that anyone has asked for space there, or would need, or has a need for where. Yeah, I imagine that lines outside of Nicola, with people picking up pizzas and waiting for pizzas, that can become a little troublesome too. So I don't recall what the reason was on the east side of the north side of First Street, but perhaps we put the barriers up and just for social distancing and not tables. I don't think Nicola wants it, and if the Pros has asked for it, they can certainly go on the side there on Baltimore.
So you're suggesting the length of the First Street between Rehoboth and Baltimore, to put the barriers up on both sides, no tables, but just create more walking space? Is that what you're suggesting?
From what I've heard from people in that area, that's what some of the businesses would want.
And have you heard that, Dennis, at all? Okay. And then what are you suggesting on the south side of First Street? Is putting the barriers there and allowing the sidewalk to be walking as well as the street to be walking?
On the south side of First Street, I would hope that Dennis can come to a solution that works for the intent of what we're trying to do here, as well as helping those businesses out.
Okay.
I don't know this.
So they're two situations, separate situations, north side and south side. But so if we put barriers on both sides of the northern route of First Street, and just leave the sidewalks open for walking as well as the street for walking, that's what you're suggesting?
That's what some businesses have suggested in those areas. But it might be helpful to hear from the city manager, one of her staff again, on what the challenges were on the north side of First Street, because I don't recall exactly what they were.
I think they're basically just saying there were no applications for using the space there.
Yeah, on the north side, again, it's still, once you put the barricade in, you still have about 3'6", so just not a lot of social distancing to go. You're just doing that, not putting tables on the sidewalk, and let it all be social distance and walking back and forth, then it would be fine. I believe it just comes down to, if you're using it as a sidewalk, if Nicola's or somebody wanted to expand out there, and it becomes a eating outside area, then the walkway is just in the roadway, and there you come on about 3'6". If you got a baby stroller, wheelchair, or anything like that, you're not going to be able to pass back and forth walking. You're going to have to basically do the block there, Rehoboth Avenue to Baltimore, with only one direction going.
I think, just to sum this up from a staff standpoint, is that, and I'm sure you've all been there and you're familiar with the locations, it's just quite narrow. Everything that we're dealing with the new barriers, with signage, pedestrian safety, it's just not advisable to have anything on First, either north or the south side, that is, that we believe would be appropriate or safe. So it's not really about, doing something quickly. If we come up with a strategic streetscape plan, you know, as we're thinking about in the future, I think that would be, you know, included, First Street. But for right now, we are not recommending that anything change on First Street.
Commissioner Schlosser, you have your hand up.
Yeah, but I really, I hear what, the city manager's saying. I just, I didn't hear that there was maybe an issue with, putting the barriers up, particularly on the west side, the northwest side of First Street, and just allowing, it to be all pedestrian walkways as opposed to tables. Are you saying that? I just clarification, Sharon, on that.
Yes, I'm saying that we believe that that is not a good and safe way to handle this.
We have to go with it.
Mayor, if we've not received an application, then it seems like we're not sure what the needs even are, and we shouldn't be guessing. But if applications come in, and it sounds like there's a possibility that applications could simply say that they need better space for lines going to the pizza place, lines going to the ice cream store. And that could be then a reason to make it safer than it is now by putting barriers on the north side.
Yep.
Mayor, if I can, because we can go around in circles on this for a while. I think that, you know, we asked Dennis to speak to those business owners, and I know Double Dippers is one that has a concern about a line forming and where they're able to stand and people get by. And that Sharon and Sharon has the executive authority to make a decision based on her staff working with the business owners on solutions that work for everyone.
All right, thank you. And she'll do that, and Dennis will work on that. Tom Evans, I believe, is here on the phone again. Sorry, Tom, would you like to say something?
Yes, sorry. Paul, first comment I have is that the procedure for the meetings has changed because up until now, public didn't speak to the very end. Unfortunately, my builder dragged me into a crawl space when you called on me. But if you changed how you call on the public, it would be nice if it was on some kind of agenda. If you're doing it item by item, it'd be nice to know that because that's a much better way to proceed. So my comments are going to go back a little bit because you didn't call on people earlier and then you called on Rick and didn't call on me. Neither here nor there, here are my comments. Back when you were talking about masks and beach, the only comment I have on the beach is that obviously it's only recommended that they have masks on the beach, and public is doing a fairly good job of social distancing. That can't be said for our lifeguards or even our head of lifeguards, although he had a mask in his hand. Our lifeguards, while it says we recommend masks on the beach, don't have a mask even visible. Anybody that is trying to lead the way to recommend masks on the beach should at least have a mask in full vision of the people who are on the beach. And none of the lifeguards I saw had a mask anywhere visible. And I don't know if they have one in a pocket, but one in the pocket is not a way to lead anybody to assume that they should take our recommendation that they should wear a mask on the beach, but that it's not required. So I think that's very bad planning. I will say the supervisor I saw did have one in his hand and he was waving it at me, and that's fine. And that's perfectly acceptable, but not to have all lifeguards with a mask clearly visible is, might as well say no masks required on the beach, in my opinion. Going back to beach again, and I don't know what the plan is, but it's worked very well to have, Sharon, thank you for all the benches in the Deauville parking lot, because it is essentially limited parking, although we're not really at any kind of maximum capacity on Deauville parking. But as we move forward, depending on what phase we're in, I still recommend that we reduce the number of parking spaces as we go forward to something less than full capacity. And that would be up to Sharon and the police and the mayor and you all to figure out what that is. because when that parking lot hits full capacity, if we are still trying to reduce and have social distancing, beaches 1 through 4 will not survive because of the density of parking that's available for a reasonable cost, because it's just a standard parking permit on those beaches. Other than that, when we get into a real crunch in the summertime and we have more people coming to town, it'll be even a bigger problem. Those are my comments for things in the past. Paul, I'm here. I'm not in the crawl space anymore. So please feel free to call on me as we move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Back to what we were speaking about. So as far as the commissioners are concerned, we've given the city manager the no vote on the boardwalk, and the city manager and Dennis will work on First Street, maybe coming up with something that might work for the two businesses on the south side of First Street. And then Dennis will question the businesses on the north side about their needs. And then maybe we come back and with maybe barriers there, and hopefully we'll get some kind of answers before next week. Is that where everybody is?
Yes, I think so.
Yes.
Okay, great. Now, and we also spoke about a bit of the path forward as far as marketing, Main Street, the chamber, the city working as a triumvirate, if you will, to move forward from a marketing perspective, PR perspective, on getting the word to the businesses about what the plan has been, what we hope to anticipate to do for the businesses, for the public, for the visitor as we move forward. Signage for the city hall lot, other areas around town to push people to park other areas. What is the path forward for our discussion? And I'm open to thoughts.
You mean
Commissioner
today?
Gay.
Today? You're asking today? Yeah.
Or for the next meeting.
Oh, well, okay. Actually, there is one important thing I wanted to talk about today, and I just have a couple of questions to start off. I guess the questions are of the city manager, but I wanted to talk about Baltimore and Wilmington, because first of all, I think that you have done a fantastic job on, when I saw, I guess, Baltimore today, with having, the barriers partially there. Because I know we didn't make a decision on that last week because there were a number of factors like driveway. So we kind of left it to be determined, but at the same time, giving you and your staff the flexibility to make decisions there. And I think you've done an excellent job. But I do see a couple of areas that don't have them yet, like down by the Pines had some tables out, but does not have any barriers. So that's my first question is, are all of the restaurants on Baltimore and Wilmington that have applied, are they going to be getting sort of just barriers for their own places and not for the whole block? That's a question too.
So we actually met with the owner of the Pines. The determination was made that they were placing 2 top tables close to their property line, which would allow enough distance for accessibility on the sidewalk, meaning they would not need barriers. And the same owner, of course, owns Aqua on the other side of the street. We met there as well, and it was determined that they would move into the driveway for their restaurant spacing, so they wouldn't need any barriers or any street location to put their tables.
That's great for Aqua, because I'd said all along, I thought if people could expand into private on private property, that's obviously the best alternative of all. But I thought the sidewalk was pretty narrow there by the Pines. Are they able to put the tables out and still have enough room to walk? I'm surprised.
Can you talk?
You can do it on mine.
Dennis is chiming in here.
Yeah. Yeah, so, it does appear at first that, it's rather narrow over there in front of the pines. However, with them using the small tables, and having their barrier for their wait staff, you're still able to maintain a minimum of 3 foot, distance on the sidewalk to meet the ADA requirements.
It doesn't do much for social distancing, 3 feet. But, I mean, okay, I mean, the other thing it brings up really is, and I haven't seen Wilmington, so I'm not sure what you're doing there, and I guess a lot of those sidewalks are wider. But the thing that it brings up for me is seeing how those solutions were done on a case-by-case basis, and going back to Commissioner Sheffer's comment at the very beginning about looking at it on a block-by-block basis. I guess I just wonder why we don't use that same guidance for the first 2 blocks of Rehoboth Avenue. I do remember that we talked about it at several meetings, and we said we didn't want a zigzag. We wanted to, have a clear walking lane and not have people have to go. But I don't know if we should revisit that, because it seems to me that on Baltimore anyway, we've been able to meet individual restaurant needs and leave the areas for other types of businesses. So why wouldn't we consider doing that in other places? I don't understand. I mean, there's only I think about how many restaurants are in those first 2 blocks that have been barricaded off. I think it might be 6, but that's a lot to barricade off for 6 restaurants. So I just ask.
Well, it goes back to the traffic regulations through DOT. Again, has to be continuous. I would tell you on some of the things we've done, and I don't want to speak for someone else, I'll just make a statement of what they mentioned to me, that they weren't necessarily happy with even some of the gaps we were putting in there, because the structure is how you hit it. Anytime you have a weak spot or whatever, that's just, and they're not pinned in the ground, it's just, it can go into somebody sitting there or walking by. So that was just on Rehoboth Avenue. I'm not even sure what they were thinking others. Now, with that being said, continuous, where it jets out at your curves or whatever, if you put it all in there, then you got a solid area. But you have to go, to that distance. So maybe it's curve, cutout to cutout. You could change it. That would still be continuous. Am I making sense, or am I confusing you?
No,
A little bit of each. Yeah, I mean, so it's because of the state road, you're saying, the requirements, they are different.
Well,
For the
it's
continuous.
a guideline, not just because it's state road, because first 2 blocks Rehoboth maintains. But
Right.
the regulations don't go by just because we maintain it.
Right, no, I get it. No, I'm saying it's because it's a special road. Yeah, okay.
I think one thing to not lose sight of, though, is the first 2 blocks of Rehoboth Avenue. We all know this. There's not any given day during the summer that you can walk there and not be elbow to elbow with other pedestrians. That's not the case on Wilmington and Baltimore Avenues, or further up on Rehoboth Avenue. And at least when we were having these considerations and what DelDOT and the chief's guidance made sense, it's also just the amount of people that are walking on those 2 blocks that I certainly had, was at the forefront of the consideration, any considerations that we were having.
But that's the case in the circle, in the horseshoe as well.
It's a little bit wider there, and there's also the middle strip where people, I guess where the bandstand is. There's that whole section too.
Yeah.
And I think it might have been you, Commissioner Gay, or maybe Commissioner Cluzy, that suggested blocking all of that off too.
I didn't.
Yeah, it might have been.
It was me.
I mean, I think it's an ideal I'd love to see, but I've gotten the sense that it's not practical here. So
Right.
On this topic of the barriers, especially on the first 2 blocks of Rehoboth Avenue, can a thought or a question just came up, Chief? Is there any value to having them there now with this? Or is there any consideration by you and from a law enforcement perspective in this, the having trouble phrasing it, but at times where there may be civil unrest, have you thought about, for example, yesterday when it thought that the protest could potentially get a little dicey with looting and things like that. I was like, oh, maybe it's a good idea that we have these barriers here just for that reason. Is that something that you've thought about, the usage of those at these times where there may be civil unrest that we're dealing with, which very well could be a reality going forward for God knows how long?
Well, to simplify it, the answer is it's help when you don't have vehicles parked there because when there's civil distress, people have a tendency of spray painting objects or breaking windows out, things like that. So when cars there, that takes that element away. As far as, it's not much difference besides that as far as with civil disobedience. And if somebody wants to steal something, they're going to steal and run, and we'll catch up to them. But yes, it helps with that, with not having vehicles in there. I don't know if I'm answering your question, but it does. It doesn't hurt it.
Okay, thank you, Chief.
Okay. And again, I go back to what I was saying before. What do we consider to be the next step as we move forward? Obviously, we're going to have city manager and staff work on First Street. I think we're going to probably get a few more applications in, and I know Dennis is going to be working on those. Do we just have another meeting next Tuesday and just discuss what the results were through the weekend? Because obviously it's going to be more crowded this coming weekend because of the rentals, probably because of the hotels, just because it's getting warmer again. Commissioner Calusi.
Yes, I think right now, one of the things that we said last Tuesday is that we were going to give it 2 weeks before we, and just kind of reevaluate. And in my opinion, reevaluate in this situation means fine tuning. So I think we probably will have these barriers there, we know through next week and probably much longer than that. But what we do have to figure out where we fit in is the governor's phased plan. Are we actually in phase 1 now, or is?
Yes.
Because I know we kind of did, worked up to it. And I don't know what he's thinking about phase 2 and what that means to us. Is there something, Mayor, that you can share with us to give us that idea so we know kind of where things are going?
I mean, I think his phase 2, it's again, if you look at the things that he's got under his phase 2, it's a lot of the same things that are in phase 1: shelter in place, maintain social distancing, non-essential travel can resume. These are a lot of things that have already been happening. It's just, I would think he's going to, phase 2 may have something to do with restaurants going from 30% to some other percent.
Well, that was my real question, because that's what really affects what we're talking about and what we're doing. So.
Yep. And I think also in phase 2, he would probably open up bars to some type of limited seating. Again, he hasn't come out with any kind of percentages. I think what he's looking for is to see how things go. He mentioned on the call today that he was up in Wilmington last night in Trolley Square, where there's a lot of restaurants, and he was a little bit worried about how crowded it was. but he stepped away and said, okay, we've got to open, see how it goes. So I would think that between now and next Tuesday or Wednesday, when he has his next call, is he will be looking for municipalities to talk about the restaurants and how things did. He'll be talking with people in the restaurant industry, as well as the hotel industry, as well as the rental industry, about how things are going. So I think he'll be able to have an idea more of where things are going.
Well, then
He's
it's down. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Basically, he's pointing to, we just got something off the internet, towards 60% capacity for restaurants.
Okay.
And, you know, shops, I would think he'll probably go with some kind of a percentage there too. And that is probably in and around June 15th.
Well, then it seems to me path forward is just maintain what we're doing at the moment, and we'll reconsider next Tuesday if we have to do anything else. But it sounds like businesses, especially in the June timeframe, will get some relief if they go to 60%. I mean, I think that's a big jump, especially when they can. Some of them will be using outdoor space as well. I think that personally that we're doing the right thing in terms of trying to keep the public safe with what we've done on the Avenue and what we're doing some on Wilmington, Baltimore, and perhaps First. But I think the restaurants should feel a lot better with these percentages going up, and hopefully they'll be able to set up their restaurants so that social distancing is possible in the situation. Or you've seen people have these plexiglass dividers. You know, I don't know what the answer is, and I'm sure they all will have different thoughts, but yeah, that's my opinion.
So the 60% is a phase 2. That's what you just found in.
That's what the inclination is. Again, depending on what happens over the next 10 or 15 days, I would think that's what they're thinking. Just as we've said in the past, I would imagine that the governor is pointing towards July 1st to be pretty close to normal percentages capacity. So 30%, 60%, maybe 90%, who knows?
Right.
But, you know, he has surprised us along the way with, I mean, right now that gatherings limited at 250, and in his phase 2, it was supposed to be 50. And so he's moving things all the time, and he's already pointing at 60% now, 15 days out, which I think is a good positive because he's starting to feel better about the way things are going. So
then there were no major announcements today at the press conference?
No.
Okay.
No. This is just what he's talking about to various people as indications of the next step.
Let me just say one other thing, which is that I thought, and I was not able to watch the press conference either last Friday or the one today, but I read something about the one last Friday where he was sort of hinting at maybe collapsing some of the phases as we go forward or something like that, which he's already kind of done.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's, you know, I don't think there's any kind of hard in stone things to happen. I think he's just looking at things on a day-to-day basis. Obviously, the metrics that he is looking at are getting better all the time. Obviously, the last couple of weekends have worked out the way he wanted to in the beach communities. You know, the crowds are coming in and gathering larger and larger each weekend. So I think that's his hope that it'll continue. Commissioner Schlosser.
Muted. Okay. There's a bunch of press releases out there just now that basically say that Carney did announce, the governor announced that phase 2 is set for June 15th, and it'll increase occupancy to 60% for retail facilities, for restaurants, for convention centers, et cetera. So a couple things on that, given that that's where it is. To answer your question specifically, I agree, and I think Commissioner Cluzy said this, is that we should spend some time next week talking about what phase 2 means.
Uh-oh, she got muted.
You slipped out again. It has to do with your system. We still can't hear you. You're not muted here.
You have to turn up the volume a little bit.
I've done all
Yep.
that.
There you go.
You're back.
You're
I
back.
don't know, it's a brand new computer, but anyway, nonetheless, I do think to answer your question, Mayor, I think for next week, we should talk about phase 2 and talk about things like the convention center and various items like that could start to reopen and what the plan is, maybe with some recommendations from the city manager for us to consider. So I think that would be valuable for next week. Between now and the weekend, though, I really do think that we at a minimum, need to put up some signs directing folks to, which we're going to do under wayfinding anyway, but maybe something we can make in-house that directs people, to the parking lots as opposed to down Rehoboth, where they're going now, number one, and number two, to clarify that it's a pedestrian walkway. And I think Sharon already said she's going to do that, but I wanted to reiterate that as an immediate kind of term action that we need to take.
Thank you. Commissioner Szymanski.
Thank you. In addition to what Commissioner Schlosser just said, I think getting some information from, like we've talked a lot about this meeting, is a better communication strategy. So I think one of the takeaways that we had earlier was the city staff coming back with how to do that. And I maybe one suggestion is, I think Main Street and the chamber are so public facing that I'm not sure why maybe the communications director and Main Street and the chamber, may just have a weekly stand-up meeting where they discuss communication and strategy. I don't know, just a suggestion that may be helpful. And I agree that, and just one last comment, as we think about phase 2, one thing to consider is, great, businesses can go up to 60%, but the one thing I'm hearing from every single restaurant is, they may be able to go up to 60% capacity, but given the distances that tables need to be, they can increase the number of people inside because they're already at the max with tables being spaced the certain way that they're at. So just want something to keep in mind as we think about, some things may sound great, but when you go to practice them, it may not be working as it's intended to.
But 60 is still double what they can do now, right?
Yeah, but many of them they're at 30%, and they're at the max with the 8-foot distant guidelines.
Okay.
They're maxed out with the number of tables they can have.
Okay.
So it doesn't matter if they can have more people because they don't have the space to put tables.
Good. Okay.
Well, as he changes that percentage, I'm sure his 8 feet will probably change to 6 feet. But so that's just something that we'll probably hear about as we go forward. Commissioner Byrne, before I recognize you, the city manager wanted to say something.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to comment specifically, Commissioner Szymanski, regarding communication, your marketing, what we can do better. I think, and I had this conversation with Commissioner Schlosser during the past 2 years. I think what you're looking for, and in my experience in another tourist community, is a tourism director. A tourism director specifically working for the city focuses on a marketing strategy and making the public aware of just how wonderful the municipality is for folks to come, and works in conjunction with a Main Street organization and a chamber organization. In the town where I was, in Provincetown, Massachusetts, there was actually a third component of the Business Guild, the Provincetown Business Guild. So there was the Chamber, the Business Guild, and the Visitor Services Center. And a tourism director actually was a paid position, a full-time position, actually with an assistant tourism director that really markets the city to do what, again, I think I'm hearing you explain. And I can talk to you more offline about that. I know that Commissioner Schlosser and I actually were involved in those discussions, and maybe you were as well. I don't recall right now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Byrne.
Yeah, very quickly. Thank you, Mayor. In answer to your question, I do think we should meet next Tuesday and we should spend as efficiently as we can be. And we're not very efficient about these things, it seems to me, but we should evaluate how it's going downtown with all the things we've talked about the last 3 weeks. And we should talk about what phase 2 means. Not to be negative, but to be realistic. In addition to the governor being, enjoying the kinds of things that he seemed to think are going on in our beach community in terms of health and safety. He also said that the rates that we're seeing in Sussex County are still higher than in the rest of the state. They're just not as high as they were some weeks ago. And so we need to be mindful of that. He also said yesterday that, and this is a direct quote, that he sees a real risk of a dangerous second wave this fall. And if he continues to see data from his public health folks, that's going to impact a lot of these things, I think. Now, the good news in all of that news is that testing is increasing very rapidly. It's easier and easier. There is now a free self-swab test from the state. You can go online. You can go online to delaware.curativeinc.com, make a quick reservation, drive just a few miles up the road, and you can do a self-swab test. It does, it tests for an active virus, but not for antibodies. And it takes like about 3 minutes, and they email you the results within 48 hours. So, good things are happening while we still need to be mindful that there is a very dangerous virus out there.
Thank you. Before I go to you, Commissioner Gay, Rick Perry, you had something you wanted to say.
Yeah, I just wanted to add one thing. I think Commissioner Shanowski hit it on the head when he was talking about the space limitations inside, irrespective of the percentage of occupancy permitted. One thing I hope you won't lose sight of is that even if the governor were to say that the restaurants can go back to 100% capacity, there is the inherent reluctance on the part of the public to be in a confined space, and particularly if we begin to see an increase in the incidence of the COVID virus spiking, which most experts predict will happen, and we'll get a better feel for that come maybe Father's Day, July 4th, as a result of the recent reopenings. But there is still going to be that public hesitation. So, a percentage number in and of itself doesn't mean the restaurants will be at that capacity inside. Thanks.
Thank you. Commissioner Gay.
I just wanted to add, you're talking about topics for the next meeting. I just wanted to add that I thought it was a good point that Tom Evans brought up about the Deauville parking lot. And I seem to remember that there is a specific guideline on, I believe it's phase 1, it may even be into phase 2, about the percentage of beach parking lots that should be allowed to be occupied. That is a specific guideline from the governor. And of course, we don't have parking lots per se, but we have that one. And I'm thinking that we should be limiting the number of cars there per the governor's. I just don't have it in front of me, so I don't remember exactly what it says. It may be 30%, but we need to be doing that.
We will look into that. And since I don't see anybody else's hand up, I know Tom Evans and Carol Everhart are still on the line. And Tom, I'll open it to you if you have any final comments for the end of the meeting.
Yes, I just echo what Susan Gay just said. Here, the real problem for those of us, and I use Deauville Beach, I use Beach 1, but for the citizens that use Beach 1, 2, 3, and 4, there's going to be a lot more pressure also coming from the beaches in front of the Henlope and then further up as we continue to maintain whatever percentage of occupancy or social distancing on those beaches. And where are they going to go? They're going to push down into Deauville if they come out of off the boardwalk. And so even if you set it at 30% in the Deauville parking lot, there's going to be more pressure coming from the people on the main beaches in Rehoboth. And I will tell you that Henlope and Acres puts great pressure on Beach 1 particularly, and there's no way to keep people from walking into their lot and to their beach and having them come onto our particular beach 1 and 2 in particular. For the beaches, that's all I've got to say, but I think you're doing as good as you can do on restaurants, outside dining, and again, it's a 4-level chess game, and again, you're finding all the problems with that. And I thank you for your service.
Thank you, Tom. Carol Everhart, is there anything you'd like to say?
Well, just in closing, to Ed's point particularly, the other states that have been closed for 4 to 6 weeks or more, open for 4 to 6 weeks or more, they are experiencing basically 25% or more less customer base. So that's the people that are fearful or have an underlying condition or something like that. So that is in the mix. And that is also correct. We've done throughout the entire restaurant tab on how many of them can actually, using the current guidelines, expand any more than they already are. They are where they are when they leave the 8 feet. So that's accurate information. Statewide. That's it, Paul.
Thank you, Carol. Okay, if there's nothing else, I don't see anybody's hands up. We will meet again at 3 o'clock next week, which is the 9th of June, and we will further discuss the reopening plan. We'll focus on how things are going, as well as pointing towards phase 2. If there's nothing else, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Want me to leave?